Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast for creators of any variety. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for being here, especially if you are a first-time listener. Plenty of other episodes you can check out. They are all on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can also read up on us on thereitispod.com. Something I want to mention right up top here. A college professor of mine, Professor Haney Howell, passed away on Monday, and he was one of my all-time favorite teachers, not just in college, just in general. I learned a great deal from him, things I still implement today, things I use every week in creating this podcast. So he had a big impact on me. His passing is having a big impact on my college community, and it shows just how significant of a role our teachers play in our lives. So if you have an opportunity to teach anyone, take great consideration in how thoughtful you can be and the responsibility you have. The bad teachers I had a big impact on me too, but not for any good reason. If you're in a position to teach, just make the choice to be a positive influence. Professor Howell is truly missed. Today's episode is coming in late. I know, it's just a crazy week. I shot a commercial on Tuesday, so that was some good news. It's maybe something you'll get to see because it's actually a national ad. I've gotten to do some other shoots up here, but this one is a national ad, so it's going to have a year run. So fingers crossed you get to check that out. And also, speaking of today's episode, it's a unique one. It's not only because I'm joined by my brother, but it's also kind of a test run of an idea we have for content involving entertainment news. So today we're trying that out. Just a little note, though. I feel like I was having an off day, and I think you can hear it. Unexpected work is being done in my apartment where I record, and I'm also back deep into the job search, which can put your head in just like a weird place. And I just think it affected my energy. I feel like I was a little off. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe it's just me. Still, though, I think it's a fun episode. This concept we're trying, if we do it again, will mutate into something else. But who knows? This is a fun little run we got here. It's just us talking pop culture, talking all that pop. So here it is. My chat with my brother. Well, I'm here with my brother Trey, also to the world known as Joe Farr III, but the family calls him Trey. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Trey and I, our whole life, have just been nerds about entertainment stuff. So we're going to talk about that in this unique episode. And Trey's background, or Joe's background, for those of you listening who know him, is that I worked at ESPN. You worked at the tennis channel briefly, but you also have been working in your own thing. You've been putting other things together, and it's more in the media and entertainment world that you have focused the majority of your career on. Right? That's fair to say?
Yep. That's fair to say.
Yeah. So that's why I feel like, we talk about this stuff all the time. We were also part of a team that went down to Florida for the World Series of Pop Culture for VH1, and we got beat, but, we went in
SmackDown before even on the air.
True.
Didn't even get on the air.
True. I don't know if people are familiar with the World Series of Pop Culture. Maybe I should reference that. But it's just basically teams going down and answering questions, quiz show type questions about pop culture. And but you go up one at a time with this. So if one of your teammates loses, then they're out. And your team is still in, but there are only two left. And then if another one loses, then it's just one left. But a lot of those like quiz show things that, at least when it's in school, it's like the team, like, they all lean over and they say, like, they deliberate. And if I contend that if we could have deliberated, we would have won because Rob knew all of the questions. He knew he knew the things that we got wrong, and he knew the things the other team got wrong. So if only, but we didn't have that opportunity. This is all just to say we're nerds about entertainment, and that's why we're talking about it. Mm-hmm. That's the justification. So let's start with the Grammys. It's just after the Grammys here, and let's talk about the moments first. So Michelle Obama was there. Former First Lady Michelle Obama was there. We were a very nice non-performance opening, essentially, which was, I thought, really nice. It was her and Jennifer Lopez, and of course the hosts Alicia Keys and Lady Gaga and Jada Pinkett Smith all speaking, and I liked that moment. And then, for the performance opening, it was Camila Cabello along with Ricky Martin and some others who performed. Also, some other moments that people talked about, and has been making the rounds in the news. Dolly Parton getting a much-deserved tribute, her being a national treasure. It's really great that she's still thriving. I think that's fun and exciting. But let's talk about winners here. Childish Gambino, a.k.a. Donald Glover, won for Best Record and Song and Video of the Year for This Is America. Very well deserved. I think the song is great and the video is really fantastic. If they could give Oscars or Emmys for music videos, then I think that should win. I think it's just that good. The Grammys get stuff wrong a lot and every year, but this isn't one of those times. So it was nice to see that he got really what was deserved there. But what is
though he wasn't there to actually accept it.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, that was the downside. He kept winning, and then they kept just having to say at least for the video, the director who works on his show Atlanta was there, but he wasn't there, which is good because he's got a blonde beard now and it doesn't look good.
At least he was in that commercial dancing against his animated self.
Yeah. The other thing, I'm also wondering, what is the difference between song and record of the year? I've never really known. I know that in one of those, it's the writer, or writers and producer, whereas with the other, I think it's just the singer and maybe the producer. I don't know, but it's just weird that they're both, because it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure they ever actually delineated that, at least not in recent years.
Right. It's just kind of a weird thing. It's even weirder than when, in the Oscars, there's a different Best Director than Best Picture. It's this is the best movie, but it wasn't directed the best. That's kind of weird. It's even weirder when it's this is the best song of the year, but it's not the best record of the year. When that doesn't match up, then that's kind of strange. But nevertheless, that's one of the more boring sides of the Grammys. And the Grammys, I feel like people kind of see it as the boring thing. They just care about the performances, and sometimes that can be lackluster. But last night, we'll get to some more performance stuff last night, but also big winners. Casey Musgrave, who's great, got Album of the Year. Cardi B won, and she was, I believe, the first solo female rapper to win a Grammy for Rap Album of the Year. So that was cool.
Which is surprising, too, that it's this late that happened.
Yeah, because how did Lauryn Hill... I guess Miseducation of Lauryn Hill was not... Maybe it didn't fall in the rap album category?
That one was probably R&B, but I'm thinking Queen Latifah,
right,
or Nicki Minaj, or you can keep naming them.
Yeah. Of course, in the 90s, you had Foxy Brown and Lil' Kim. Has Lil' Kim not won? But there's a lot of good competition, and that also brings us a part of that I'll mention in a second. I'll mention here with Greta Van Fleet winning for Rock Album of the Year. Now, this may be something that made a lot of people roll their eyes about the Grammys because they are a big band. But Pitchfork recently had that famously scathing review of their album and just really ripped them a new one. Basically, they flat out called them a costume because everything just seems sort of cribbing from Led Zeppelin or something, like in every way. The look, the sound, even the lyrics. It seems like all just done for the sake of evoking a certain feel. And that seems to be when I hear people talk about Greta Van Fleet, it's not really positive. Like I've heard a couple people say like, hey, they're making kids want to play guitar again. At least that's going on. But no one's really saying anything. I'm not hearing a bunch of positive comments about them as a band. And so them winning Best Rock Album, I didn't really pay attention to rock albums this year, so I don't know what else was nominated. And that's what goes back to like maybe why Lil Kim didn't win for Best Rap Album was because there was a hot Jay-Z record that year. I don't know. But we can only talk about nominees and winners and losers within the scope of what else came out that year. And because I don't really know the other rock albums this year, I don't know if this was ridiculous for them to win.
I will say, though, remember when they were on SNL,
Mm-hmm.
I said to you, why are they doing an impersonation?
No,
Like,
listen.
it didn't sound like that's the actual voice of any of the people up there.
No, you're right. And I had the same feeling when I saw them on the Tonight Show. That was the first time I heard of them. And I just thought, is this a band that started out as, and I wasn't making a joke. I said, is this a band that started out as a Led Zeppelin tribute band? Because that's just how they come across. And then they act oblivious to that. And it's like, how can you dress like that and try to act like you didn't know that you have some sort of Led Zeppelin vibe going, I don't think the rhythm section is the same as Led Zeppelin. That's not, that doesn't really sound the same to me, but the vocals do clearly. Even some of the stage mannerisms.
Mm-hmm. With shades of Axl Rose from November Rain times, depending on the song.
Yeah, I can see that too. So, I just, this might be like Engelbert Humperdinck beating Bob Dylan for Best New Artist. Like, I just wonder how this is going to play out in the long run. But, I think Greta Van Fleet's they're at least going to get another big second album out of this. I mean, you can't win Rock Album of the Year and then just go back under a rock. Like, they're going to be here for a while with success like that. So I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of performances, though, we'll get back to talking about performances. There was some talk online about Cardi B's performance being controversial. Was it, though? It seemed pretty... I mean, I understand there was a sexual element to it, but is that really new? That part seems pretty standard nowadays, right?
Not just nowadays, like it's decades of
exactly.
being
it's like, have you heard of Madonna?
Aspects. Yeah, and there wasn't I didn't bat an eyelash at anything. I mean, she wore normal kind of costumes, and
she wasn't.
The lyrics
it wasn't
are what
super
they've always
revealing.
been.
Yeah. I don't know who is
complaining.
complaining.
Was kind of normal.
Yeah. I mean, you go back 25 years to like some Janet Jackson stuff. I mean, that's a long time ago. So how is this like raising an eyebrow? Who are the people who were complaining about it? That's what or saying it's controversial. Like, it just seems like phony pearl clutching.
Yeah, I was about to say maybe clickbait headlines.
Yeah.
Then you read the article and there's no actual critique of what's controversial.
Right. Yeah. Or any real substance to it. It just seems sort of there. Speaking of controversy and the Grammys, there was something that was fairly talked about. I mean, I don't think it was trending in a real big way on Twitter, but it was that Jennifer Lopez was involved in the Motown tribute. Some thought that it should have been an all-black lineup. Here's a lot about this to sort of unpack. So what was interesting to me when I was reading that is a People magazine article, and they're sharing, like, they shared a tweet, and this is one of the things I hate about journalism now, is that they share just random tweets, and there's not necessarily any credence to what's being presented in the tweet. It's just, here are the people saying they liked it, and here are people saying they didn't like it, but they're not across the board getting intellectual people talking about things. And so one tweet, a person referred to it as, and this is what's in the People magazine or people.com article, I don't understand how you could hashtag whitewash, hashtag Motown tribute with @JLo. So we even added her. And my thing is, there are a couple of things about that jump out to me. Number one, is JLo whitewashing? I didn't realize that Jennifer Lopez was white.
Yeah, I mean, Latina washing maybe, but
right. Like I didn't realize Puerto Rican was okay. And also, and this is
But even if she were white, I mean, what would be wrong with having a white person perform?
Yeah.
If it's a strong performer who can honor the songs.
Right.
I mean, it was a great performance. Yeah. This might be some of her best singing I've ever seen from her.
Right. And I think she did a solid job. I think it's great that she wanted to honor. I mean, isn't it good when people of other races want to honor something that's so big in our history? Like, I get that it is Black History Month and everything, and I also understand wanting to putting just us up there on the pedestal, or in the spotlight to sort of showcase us. But I feel like when people of other races want to honor something that's so big from our culture, the Black culture, that's a good thing. And B, isn't that kind of what we want? Like, to have that impact on other people that are not just us? Mm-hmm. And doesn't that...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, isn't that showcasing Black History Month to have, for everyone to want to honor it? That's a good thing that Jennifer Lopez wanted to do that. If Shawn Mendes wanted to do it, I'd still be like, hey, thanks.
The only question I could see as being somewhat valid is that JLo was never a Motown performer.
Yeah.
And so there's the question of why someone who's not Motown performing.
Right.
And maybe that's where some of this backlash is coming from. The people tweeting or whatever aren't quite sophisticated enough to separate being Black versus having recorded for Motown.
Right.
But the race shouldn't come into it at all.
Well, this particular guy specifically said whitewashing. And again, People magazine is putting this out there, and I went to the guy's account, and he's got 18 followers. And that particular tweet, as of right now, has 12 likes. So why are we putting dumb thoughts out there like this? And this is Smokey Robinson's response to this supposed controversy. He said, I don't think anyone intelligent is upset. And he went on to say, who's stupid enough to protest Jennifer Lopez doing anything for Motown?
Right.
So, that's my biggest issue, is big news outlets sharing unintellectual points from Twitter with just millions of people. Everybody can see this now because it's People Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that there have always been people who said stuff, dissenting voices, and maybe there weren't that many of them. They always have existed, and they just didn't have Twitter to put themselves out there in front of everybody. And I think there's a good thing about that. But what I think is bad is when news outlets, who I think should be pushing for intellectual thought and good discussion, which only involves someone who is understanding, someone who's sophisticated enough to make a good point, I feel like that's what should be out there. I think that's what they should put in. I don't disagree with this guy. I mean, I don't think what he said was unintellectual because I disagree. I think it's unintellectual because it's stupid, and he's not putting a lot of thought into it. And that's
right.
A problem I have with these news outlets putting out unintellectual thoughts that people just didn't put much thought into, put much time into to process it, out there for everybody to see. I think it dumbs us down. I think the intellectual way to put it would have been to say, hey, I really appreciate that Jennifer Lopez cared enough about Motown to want to be a part of this, but why wasn't Stevie Wonder involved? Why wasn't so-and-so involved? And why wasn't Stevie Wonder involved? He was in Motown. Maybe he had some sort of falling out.
There's a Motown special that CBS is going to air in a couple of weeks, and Stevie Wonder's in it, and Smokey Robinson's co-hosting. They promoted it during the Grammys.
I get it.
I know.
Oh, right.
But there's all these Motown people who are going to be doing a full 1 hour 60th anniversary of Motown special.
That's very similar to the Beatles special that they did a few years ago, where they had a few people perform a song on the Grammys, a Beatles song on the Grammys, but then a couple weeks later they had the Beatles special.
Right.
So it's just like that.
Which was actually shot the night of the Grammys.
Yes.
It was actually shot when everyone was still there.
Right.
They just aired it 2 weeks later.
I see. So that's why. So what they did with J-Lo is they took this megastar and they got her involved so that they can promote this other thing. If people took time to think about that, I mean, it's like that phrase, I love of George Clooney, take 15 minutes in a thought process and you don't write that tweet. I just am so annoyed with the way I can talk about it all day and I shouldn't, but it just annoys me when these reputable publications share time and time again dumb tweets from people who don't have a following. And there's a good thing about someone who doesn't have a following getting their thoughts and their feelings out there. There's a good thing about that. But the bad thing is they are indiscriminate about who they're going to give a voice to. It's just, here's someone who said something, it's got a lot of shade, it's real, it's biting. But it's not biting because it's a good point. It's biting because they just said something mean-spirited.
Mm-hmm. And by putting it in People Magazine, it sounds like a lot of people have that belief when really it's this one dude with 12 likes on that tweet.
Absolutely. And then it also gives it some sort of credence that it doesn't need to have, because it's not a good thought. Now, if it's somebody who has 18 followers, and then 100,000 people like it and 50,000 people retweet it, that says something. That this person happened to say something that caught fire with a lot of people. So that is representative of how a large portion of people who are talking about a subject feel. And that's a good reason to retweet it. But if they have 18 followers and 12 likes, it's probably because no one really agrees with anything they have to say. And all the comments that they shared were just like, oh, that's not really a good point. All right, moving on from the Grammys, we're going to talk a little. We're going to get real nerdy here. We're going to talk about the Arrowverse, also called the Flareoverse, DC's television shows that are on the CW. Now, I think first, so Trey and I both love these shows, and these, just for those who don't know, it's Supergirl, The Arrow, which is about Green Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. We also watch Black Lightning, which isn't quite in the same universe as those other 4 shows, but those first 4 shows are all in the same universe. They don't have anything to do with...
And retroactively, Constantine's part of that universe.
Yes, right. Constantine was on several years ago on NBC. It was only on for a season before it got canceled, but now that character, Constantine, has been on Legends of Tomorrow. He's on this season, and they brought him in previously on Arrow and some other, and I think another episode of Legends of Tomorrow before he became a regular cast member. And the big news coming out of that is about a character or an actor who's on The Flash. And I should also mention that I get that a lot of people don't look at CW shows with a lot of, they don't give it a lot of credit, which I think is a little unfair because these shows, especially The Flash, are pretty well put together and well acted. Mm-hmm. It's hard to even single out one this past season because Legends of Tomorrow has been so on fire. And Stephen Amell really brings it as Oliver Queen / Green Arrow. But we are going to talk about The Flash right now. The actor who plays Cisco, Carlos Valdez, I believe that's the correct pronunciation, but I don't have a good accent. He has said that he is going to be leaving as a regular cast member. And he's quoted as saying he wants to move on to new pastures. So he doesn't say greener pastures. He says new pastures. He plans to leave the show once this season finishes its run, but they are going to do, it sounds like they are probably going to like leave the door open for him to be able to come back around. This is huge news.
Yeah, and we should note, while he has made this statement about new pastures, the actual idea that he's leaving seems to still be rumor territory. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's not what's going to happen. But it would be based on the makeup of the show. It would be definitely huge because he's a big part of all of the science and Star Lab stuff. So it'd be interesting to see what that means for the show if he's not there. Right. I mean, I think the positive of it is that Barry Allen in his own right is supposed to be this brilliant scientist, and in addition to the CSI part of his character, and it's taken a little bit of a back door to see how great of a scientist he is because they've had to also show that Cisco is that great.
Right.
And so maybe we'll see more of that from Barry if Cisco's not there.
Yeah. Because, I mean, they've already acknowledged that he created Gideon, right? But in the future, it's a future Barry Allen, not just in the future, Barry Allen creates Gideon. And we haven't seen that from him yet. It seems like that's something that Cisco would have done. But, Cisco's also such a big, he's like the 3rd lead on that show, would you say? Or was he more like 4th or maybe 5th? I mean, obviously Barry's the 1st lead, Iris is the 2nd lead. And yeah, it does depend on the season. In some cases, maybe you could see Tom Cavanaugh, like 1st season is the 3rd lead. Maybe even Joe is a 3rd lead in some
Jesse
respect.
L. Martin.
Yeah. So yeah, like maybe he's not quite the 3rd lead. But Cisco is such a significant, he names all the bad guys, he creates all this tech that the team uses, so it's a pretty big loss for the show if he is in fact leaving. But I also wonder when he says new pastors what he means, because the actor side of me, person who wants to be a working actor, that part of me is saying, gosh, man, keep this regular check.
Yeah, that's where it's, at least with Jeremy Jordan, when he left Supergirl as a regular, we knew it was to go be on Broadway. Like, we knew the actual thing he was leaving for. There doesn't seem to be a hint of that with Carlos Valdez. So maybe there's another project or two he's already got in mind, or maybe the only chance to ever be a lead is if he leaves this show, or I don't know what his thought process is, but if there's a bird in hand, I get it. If it's, I hope there's going to be a bird down the road, then
I get it less. Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of schools of thought in my mind when it comes to an actor leaving their regular show, their regular paycheck show. And one is for artistic reasons, which might be if you're getting typecast in a role and it's hurting your chances of getting other roles, or if the quality of the show has gone way down. And then the other school of thought is for business reasons, which can sometimes not be a good idea. It's not necessarily the same integrity to that in all cases. There's some cases where there's plenty of integrity to it, but in some cases it just seems like they're chasing money. Now, we don't know what he's going for here, so we can't say that he's just chasing money or something like that. But I was worried that it's too much of a risk, because I looked at his IMDb and he doesn't have upcoming projects. And all of his on-screen credits have, in some way, shape, or form, have to do with Flash, or at least the Arrowverse. Because even the 2 shorts that he has done, one short was Tom and Grant, which was a short that Tom Cavanaugh, other cast member of The Flash, directed and put together with Grant Gustin, who plays The Flash. So, he's involved with that because he was on The Flash. And then another one he's in with Melissa Benoist, which was directed and written by Chris Wood, which he also would not know. He wouldn't have been in that, So all of his credits come from being with The Flash, and maybe he just feels like, I don't want to only be known as this guy. I want an opportunity, like you said, to be a lead. But again, you have to have a bird in hand, it seems like. I just don't know. We
should also note he's got a musical background, like many of the cast of these shows, so he, who knows if there's a Broadway or an off-Broadway thing in mind. And they also shoot in Vancouver, and I presume he lives in LA.
Yeah.
So there could be some aspect about, maybe not wanting to be away from home for so long of the year.
Yeah.
There are all those things that play into it that we don't know anything about.
Right.
But I think what would be really nice, obviously the Flareverse has included animated shows. They had Vixen for 2 seasons, and they did an animated Constantine once he became part of it. I wouldn't be surprised if they do an animated Vibe or something like that to kind of keep them in the fold. And even if things don't work out, kind of like Keenan Lonsdale, the door's still open. Keenan Lonsdale can come back either to Flash or Legends.
Yeah, he plays Wally West, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
That would be.
It sounds like they're going to keep that open. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be cool if he got a few special, maybe animated series things, like you were mentioning with Vibe, which is his superhero character name. For those who don't know, we've been saying Cisco, but it just depends. It's all case by case. Both George Clooney and what's his name, who's on NYPD Blue and then CSI Miami?
David Caruso.
Both of them left their big shows, their regular paychecks, a bit earlier than people maybe would have thought, especially in David Caruso's case, but under very different circumstances. David Caruso was breaking his contract and chasing movie stardom, and George Clooney, this is interesting, and this is kind of where I go back to just the safety of keeping your regular paycheck. So George Clooney left ER after 5 seasons, which he publicly said, I'm not going to do a David Caruso and break my contract. He publicly said that. He did say that he felt that the writing was not what it used to be on that show, and he feels that it's going to go into an area that the show never was. So there was some artistic reason for doing it, but also he had a lot of birds in hand because he had such a big opportunity to just do movies. He had done 5 or 6 movies by the time he left ER. He had already done the vampire movie From Dusk Till Dawn. He had already done Out of Sight. He had already done Batman and Robin. He had already done One Fine Day and Peacemaker. He did all of those movies while he was a regular cast member on ER. And he even said publicly that because he didn't like the experience of Batman and Robin, filming it or the aftermath, he said he went to his business manager and said, "How am I doing?" And the business manager said, "You can live the rest of your life comfortably." And so that was when he left ER. Like he didn't do it before he had any movie roles. He did it after he had many movie roles, and then Three Kings movie came out the season 6 during right at the beginning of season 6 for ER, which is right after he left. So to me, I just feel like you can't expect to have all the movies that he had, especially movies that were big like he had before leaving. But gosh, if I just feel like there's security in staying with the show. I mean, that show is doing the best numbers wise. It's not going to get canceled soon. Just stick with it. But, you'd have to know a lot more about what his thought process is.
Yeah, plus you have to consider most folks, no matter what industry they're in, these days, we don't stick around in one job that long.
No.
5 years is a long time to be in one place, even if you love it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need to kind of move on to spread your wings. But I suspect, even if this rumor is true, he's going to be part of Crisis on Infinite Earth next year.
Yeah.
I can't imagine he would skip out on that.
Yeah, I just don't know, and I don't know. I don't think he would skip out on that either. But I also just don't know what they're going to do. His voice is so unique to him on that show that, how are they going to fulfill that on there? But they've done...
To the point, his voice is so specific to the point that even on Arrow, they'll reference, well, I'm not Cisco, but...
Exactly, and they've done that more than once. On the other shows. That's it's a big loss, a big blow. Well, moving on from the Arrowverse, but not from comic book stuff, we'll talk about briefly here Shazam. There were rumors that Henry Cavill had shot a Superman cameo for Shazam, and there was a lot of mystery around whether or not that was true. But ScreenRant.com is reporting that it does exist. It's just whether or not it's actually going to see the light of day. There's apparently some contract negotiations that are underway with Cavill and the DCEU that don't sound great publicly because, there's one report that he's not involved. And then his people came back and said, no, he's still involved. And then there was a report of, well, he's demanding all of this stuff. Script approval and director approval and producer credit. And then his people said, no, that's not true at all either. So we have no idea what's really going on. And it's not even definite that he did in fact shoot this cameo. But my question is, if they did, what would it really mean for your excitement to see Shazam?
That's the interesting thing. I think because of how the DCEU has been put together and pulled apart and then tried to be cobbled back together, it's this thing where it's not the same level of excitement as even when Tony Stark showed up at the end of The Incredible Hulk. That was exciting.
Yeah. Because
you're seeing the universe build. And same thing even in Thor: The Dark World, which was an okay movie. It's not the best of the Marvel movies, but Loki pretends, he uses his magic to look like Captain America. That's not a true cameo, but it was still fun.
Yeah.
And all those little things help to make it a real universe. And I think what happened with the DCEU is they messed up in their universe building so much that it's hard to know whether I would care that much about Superman being in it or not.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, obviously, from what we've read and some stuff that's been in some of the trailers, we know that Shazam is directly referencing events of Batman versus Superman and Justice League. Mm-hmm. So it is part of that universe. So it would be nice to have some kind of real connective tissue there. But, will it really make me that much more excited to see Superman? I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm okay with Cavill as Superman. I think he delivers. I think the way the character's been written is where I have the bigger problem. And so I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with him being in it, but it's just a matter of which version of Superman are we going to get? Are we going to get the not fun version from Man of Steel, the overly brooding version from Batman versus Superman, or the fun version, the one that we all like, the one that seems like the quintessential version of Superman that we got at the end of Justice League? Hopefully it would be the third, but who knows? And also another weird thing about it is apparently the cameo is in voice only. So it's even more if that's true, that's way boring. How in the world could just his voice be particularly exciting as a cameo?
Depends on how it's done. If it's like this surprise to even Billy Batson or Shazam that suddenly Superman showed up and you're looking at the facial expression of either whether it's Billy Batson or whether he's in a Shazam persona, that's the thing that they're lingering on. I could see how that could still be exciting because it's oh my God, I'm meeting my hero, sort of thing.
And that's true. And they're also saying that it's more and this is a report from test screenings. That's where Screen Rant got this. Apparently, it's not just that it's his voice only. It's just that his face isn't visible. So he could be on screen, and then we just see, it could, who knows? They could do something really funny.
Over his shoulder sort of thing.
Yeah, and to always see is just Billy, dropping his icy or something like that. I don't know. I tell you, though, the trailer does look like it's a fun movie. The trailer makes it look like it's a fun movie. So I do
I'll tell you, one of the things that really sold it for me was seeing Zachary Levi flossing as Shazam. He really was getting that childlike energy right.
Yeah, and as right as from what we can tell, it looks like he got that as right as Tom Hanks got in Big. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm not cautiously looking forward to it because I feel like it's enough out of the DCEU that it's not going to be it's not going to mess up anything, or also it's Shazam. It's not like it's my favorite superhero or anything.
But neither Thor wasn't either. But when it was done right, he became a fan favorite.
Yeah. I mean, he's still I probably could still name several before I would get to Thor, but because I really did not like Thor as a kid. Growing up, I just thought Thor was the corniest, so I never paid any attention to him. I liked Aquaman more than I liked Thor. That's how much I did not care about Thor, but his entrance in Infinity War at Wakanda is dope. And one of my favorite things from all of the MCU movies was that moment. If I had to write a top 10, that would be up there. Great moment. Well, that's enough of comic book stuff and Shazam. We'll see how things pan out the rest of the year. A lot of movies coming out. I'm excited to see how everything unfolds. I want to see Marvel, Captain Marvel. I really want to see the new Spider-Man movie, and obviously I want to see Endgame. I haven't seen Aquaman yet, but I'm definitely going to see those, and I think I'm definitely going to see Shazam.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm more looking forward to Shazam than Aquaman even. I still haven't seen it, despite all of the reviews. I just haven't been sold on the trailers the same way I have with Shazam.
Right. Same for me. Well, moving on, and this will be, I guess, the last big topic, unless we decide to throw something else in there at the end. SNL. We're both big SNL nerds. We've been watching them since we were single-digit age pretty regularly. Halsey just hosted and was a musical performer. I was surprised at how strong she was.
Yeah, and when I saw she was gonna host, I wondered why.
Yeah, me too.
Not because of anything negative, but like when Justin Timberlake hosted, Christina Aguilera, Bruno Mars, Britney Spears, you can keep naming the musical artists. I got it. I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew why they were hosting.
Yeah.
But with Halsey, even though she proved, as you said, that she has the ability when she hosted, I didn't know going into it why they tapped her on the shoulder.
Yeah, I wonder. I really want to know, like, what tipped them off that she would be good because, you know, and I know some people might think like, oh, Justin Timberlake, but Justin Timberlake and Britney and Christina Aguilera were Mouseketeers. So they were used to doing sketches. Yeah, they were kid sketches, but they were kids when they were doing sketches. Like that to me made it pretty, you know, I at the time when I heard Justin Timberlake was hosting for that first time, I don't remember being super excited because I didn't pay any attention to him or NSYNC. But I also didn't think, oh, that's stupid, he would be terrible, because I knew he wasn't going to be Johnny Mosley, who was my go-to, this is a terrible episode of SNL, like, or a terrible host of SNL, just because he had nothing to bring. He did one voice in every sketch, one put-on voice he had. But, you know, at least with those people, they had Mouseketeers. Bruno Mars, I liked already when I heard he was going to host. I was a little surprised because I didn't know that he would have had... I had a similar experience to him that I had with Halsey of like, I wonder what made them think he would. And then I saw the commercial he did, which was a super funny commercial where he said, like, I'm the musical guest, and then like, or I'm the host, and then the musical guest, him as a musical guest comes in the back and tries to throw shade. And then he had some line like, you just worry about being the musical guest or whatever, you know, like it was just like adversarial, and he really delivered the humor of that very well. And I thought, well, he's going to be good. And he was great. And, I just didn't know with her. I was just like, I haven't seen enough of her to think that she'd be able to deliver the comedy, but she was so solid. Like, she was in it. She was not swallowed up. She did taped bits. She did live bits, and she seemed like a regular cast member. I'm not saying she's like someone who could do what Kristen Wiig or Maya Rudolph or somebody did, but I just mean she felt like a part of the team, whereas a lot of times, especially the weaker hosts, don't necessarily feel like a part of the team. They feels like, oh, it's so-and-so on SNL, whereas she seemed like any of the others, you know, like she wore the wigs well, like she had a good face for the wigs. She matched the essence of the role she was playing really well. She should host again. Yeah, the one thing I would say, and this is not on her, is more the makeup of the sketches. They didn't necessarily give her much to be able to showcase how far she could go. Mm-hmm. But she committed to every role, even if it was just the straight man role or just the foil or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that often is the most important thing. Like you hear how they talk about Dan Aykroyd and Phil Hartman being able to be that glue. Yeah. And how important that is, even if that's not the thing that you remember or take away from the sketch. Mm-hmm. So she fulfilled that very well. Yeah. But it wasn't the same kind of showcase that, you know, a lot of hosts get for you to remember, oh, yeah, this sketch was great because. Right. That's fair. Yeah, and I feel like, and this is just the thing I was going to say about SNL and all, they've had fine hosts this season to good hosts. And they've had a lot of funny moments, I think, this season and good things going on. But there seems to be something missing right now for me. There have been hosts that I've liked and episodes that I've liked, but I can't quite put my finger on what seems to not be there quite enough. And I don't know, maybe it's just not, like there hasn't quite been that every sketch or nearly every sketch is
is great and you'll remember it. Like, you know, if I go back, like I look at the list of hosts and I'm like, okay, I remember that these people hosted this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember kind of like. For the most part,
I would have to but I would have to look at the list of sketches that appeared in each of these episodes to really remember, oh yeah, I like that one. Like, it's not memorable in the way that I can just off the top of my head rattle them off this year.
Right.
Unlike in previous years.
Right. I don't think it's been a bad season, though. You know, I don't know. It's just, I think that is right, though. It hasn't had that, like, special episode. You know, a lot of times the Christmas episode is such a special episode, whereas this year it was all right.
They didn't even go on the ice.
Right, you're right. You know, like, every so often you have, like, this special episode, and I think, the first episode in the show's history like that was the Richard Pryor one, where just something else was happening, and you can't really make that. You can't manufacture that. It just is. You just got to do the show like you always do it, and then that just happens or it doesn't. And that's one of the things.
One of the more recent ones that captured it like that was Dave Chappelle hosting right after the election.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Jimmy Fallon's Christmas episode is one that I put in that category as well. But like even last year, it felt sort of similar to this. Like there were, like obviously like Tina Fey went on. She's great, but that episode it wasn't her best hosting episode. And that's what this season has just kind of felt like. Like this is good.
I'm surprised Seth Meyers wasn't. Like, he was solid, but you know, he actually acted on that show before he became the Weekend Update guy and the co-head or the head writer, not co-head. So he has sketch experience, but it seemed like he was more of the Weekend Update guy being in sketches rather than a repertory player a little bit, both in the writing for the sketches as well as his acting in them. I mean, it was still a good episode.
I really liked that episode, and it does have it is one of the lower rated episodes of the season if you go by IMDb. But I really liked that episode. But I see what you mean. A lot of times the host, everything is sort of matched around their persona or brand or type or style, which when you're a cast member, you can break free from that. And I think he's been the Weekend Update type for so long that I think that's just what happened with his episode.
Yeah, because even that Bill Cosby sketch that got a lot of people angry, but I thought it was hilarious.
Me too. I'm laughing to say
it was more. Yeah, it was more just. It was kind of like how Seth Meyers at the Weekend Update desk would react to this ridiculous guest coming on. He wasn't really doing much.
Yeah,
but the sketch was hilarious.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I love that sketch, and then I recently heard, and it was from like a gossip rag, so it's probably not true, but a couple weeks ago I saw some headline or some article that was saying that Bill Cosby has been in real life like seeing other prisoners and treating them like patients, like he's a doctor, and someone like referred to it as him reliving his Heathcliff Huxtable years, and I was like, this is the sketch. This is the SNL sketch.
Oh, man.
This is what comedy should be. Where you'd say, like, here's something absurd, and then it really happens. Like, that, and, like, people, I understand, get offended, but this is what comedy is. It's like, yes, that would be ridiculous to happen. That's why it's funny.
Well, that's what makes Seth Meyers' opening monologue from that SNL so funny. Because I always assumed that sketch that he referenced in his opening monologue where Kanye kept going up, interrupting people when they won awards.
Yeah.
I always assumed that happened after the Taylor Swift thing. But it was 2 years before.
Yeah. It's insane. Insane. And that's good comedy when somebody can say, like, he seems like the kind of dude who would do this. And then be
Kanye
so
actually
accurate
laughed
that he does.
and said, I do that.
Yeah. That's some good stuff. Well, we've reached the end of the episode, and this being a unique episode, I don't know if it makes sense to create something like we normally do. The idea was sort of to, Trey and I have been talking about a place where there are discussions like this about just pop culture, just about entertainment, kind of the way ESPN has shows that are just talking about the nitty-gritty of sports. And this was sort of a test run of that idea. And I like it. I don't know if it'll happen again. I don't know how to make it more. But yeah, I like the idea of it. You break down the stuff. This was similar to an old radio show I did back in the day. Well, Trey, thanks for being here. Really appreciate having you on.
Well, thank you. And I'll be expecting some donuts or money in the mail.
Neither will happen. Well, there you have it. A couple of nerds talking pop. I enjoyed that. I hope you did as well. If we do it again, then I'm sure it's going to have some different elements to it. It's kind of maybe a backdoor pilot to another podcast. I have some podcast ideas that I want to try out. So we'll see what happens in the future. Speaking of the future, we have some fun episodes coming up. I think I mentioned before that I have some yeses from some really great people. It's all just scheduling now at this point. Interviewing somebody this weekend and next weekend, a couple of really great ones that are coming. So I'm very excited to get those in the can and get them out to you. If you want to follow us online, you can. At There It Is Pod on both Twitter and Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at Jason Farr Jokes and on Instagram at Jason Farr Pics. And hit us up, tell us what you want us to talk about or want us to cover or who you want us to interview online. Just mention that to us on social media. Well, that's it for us today. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.